If we added in the court fees, we'd be much higher, but unfortunately they took they count that under the court budget.
The 1.2% admin fee comes into the treasurer's office, which is over $1 million. So, we're
There you go.
as well.
It is 6 p.m. We will call this regular meeting of the Meridian Township Board to order, this March 19th, 2024 meeting. Supervisor Jackson is unable to be here this evening, so I will be standing in as Supervisor Pro Tem to chair the meeting. And with that, if you'd please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And this evening we'll have Deputy Clerk Emily Gordon call the roll, please.
Supervisor Jackson, Clerk Guthrie, Treasurer DeShane.
Here.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Here.
Trustee Sumlin.
Here.
Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Trezise.
Here.
5 board members absent, or present, 2 board members absent.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk Gordon. Next up on our agenda is item 4A, presentation, the 2024 Local Road Program. We have Deputy Manager Dan Opsimer.
Good evening, Supervisor Pro Tem Hendrickson and board members. Get the presentation up here.
Stephen, would you mind closing one of those doors, maybe?
Thank you.
All right, so this evening we are going to be presenting the 2024 Local Road Program. So just to recap the Local Road Program, we do have 153 miles of local roads. This has increased from 148 from the inception of the program in 2020. This is year 5 of the 10-year plan in terms of the millage construction. And our goal at the outset of this new program was to obtain a PACER rating, or a pavement rating, of an 8 on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being an excellent road, 1 being a poor road. So that was our goal with the program at the very outset. So let's take a look at where we are. So the actual PACER ratings are in orange on this slide, and kind of our goal or our target progression is in blue. And as you can see, and as we've been discussing, we are slightly behind where we would like to be based on the original metrics that we set for this program. Largest contributing factor is the inflation we experienced from 2021 to 2022. So we only had 2 years of the program, construction years 2020 and 2021, that were not impacted by the staggering inflation that we saw beginning in 22. And specifically, asphalt is our largest pay item, and it increased by over 50% from 21 to 22. However, we are still looking very good. We're pacing to arrive somewhere around a 7, maybe 6.75 to 7.25 roughly. A lot of that will be dependent upon how many fair roads decline to poor roads, of course. And we are still kind of looking for tools to slow down that decline beyond crack fill. Right now, crack fill is our only tool for those roads that are in fair condition. Just to recap the 2023 program, we had 5.9 miles of reconstruction, 3.94 miles of crack fill, 7.29 miles of overlays on the chip and fog roads. So we overlaid 1.5 inches of asphalt on those roads. And then we had 14.27 miles of asphalt rejuvenator, which was new to the program for 2023. So in total, we worked on 31.4 miles of local roads. So that's approximately 1/5 of the local road network received some work in 2023. I'm just showing you a couple of pictures about what the actual work looks like in a neighborhood setting. Obviously, it's very disruptive to the day-to-day life of residents, which is why we send out a very detailed and extensive notice and provide real-time updates, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as it relates to the 2024 program. 2024 funding sources. we do this every year, but just to reiterate for the public at home, we do not receive any state dollars for these roads. The state act, which distributes the vehicle registration fee revenue and the fuel tax revenue, does not acknowledge that local roads exist. So we get zero funding from the state. All that state money goes into the highway system and the state trunk lines and the county primaries. The road department does contribute $335,000. This has increased starting last year. For the prior decade, we were receiving $172,500. And then, of course, we have our general fund commitment of $280,000 annually. And this year, we budgeted $4.25 million from the bond proceeds for the millage. And the 2024 program, which I will show you the map here shortly, but it does include a little over 6 miles of roads being reconstructed, 13.39 miles of crack fill, 13.04 miles of asphalt rejuvenator, for a total mileage of 32.75 this year. And as a reminder, so the asphalt rejuvenator is new to the program. This is a treatment that we learned about from a contractor out of Ohio, working in concert with the Ingham County Road Department. And here is a sample or an example from a different community where they treated half the road. So in this case, they did the spray treatment on half the road, and you can see the contrast on the center line where the two pavements butt up against each other on the center line of the road. So what we're spraying onto the roads, this asphalt rejuvenator it has maltines, which is used in the chemistry of actually mixing asphalt. It's what binds the sand and aggregate together. And so we're trying to keep those maltines from deteriorating for as long as humanly possible to slow that deterioration curve of the road. So that's what this does. And I think the most pointed fact about the asphalt rejuvenator is that it produces 7 times the life expectancy per dollar invested relative to reconstructing the road. So even if it grossly underperforms our expectations of adding 4 to 7 years of life, even if we get 1 year of life, that dollar was better invested than if it was being put into reconstructing the road in terms of how much life you're going to get out of that treatment. That concludes the presentation portion, but I do want to show the board a few maps and a few more things. So this is our map for the 2024 program on your screen. The green are the roads that will be crack filled. The orange are orange is the roads that will be treated with asphalt rejuvenator. Yellow, which is difficult to see on the screen, it's easier to see in print, but the yellow roads are the roads that will be reconstructed that have ditches. And the purple or blue color are the roads that will be reconstructed that have curb and gutter. So you can see we're going to be working pretty extensively in the Tower Gardens area. All of the roads that you see in orange are roads that were reconstructed in 2021. We're finishing up our 2021 reconstructs with the asphalt rejuvenator treatment. And then we're also treating all of the chip and fog overlay roads from last year to try to slow how quickly those mirroring cracks will reflect through the new asphalt. So every road in orange was reconstructed in 2021, or it was an overlay for the chip and fogs last year. So we'll be working in the Crest neighborhood. We've already been in here once. We'll be finishing that up, and then we're doing another neighborhood adjacent to the lake. We're doing the Hickory Island Carlton neighborhood. We're pretty much going to be finishing up the Tower Gardens neighborhood with reconstructs with Biber, Gossard, and Hardy right here. And then over off Green Road here, we've got the Wood Valley neighborhood. We're trying to finish everything up off Shoesmith Road because Shoesmith will need a reconstruct in the future. So we're trying to actually prepare for the future reconstruct of Shoesmith. And then moving to the south limits, in the Okemos zip code, we're going to be working heavily in the Riverwood neighborhood, Okemos Square neighborhood, and Sundance Estates. So we're trying to aggregate our work. If you look at the blue and, well, the purplish blue and the yellow, you can see we're really trying to concentrate our work in a couple of zones to reduce mobilization and try to save some cost. One of the things that worked out very well with this year's bidding, so we put out the curb and gutter roads to bid first. So Michigan Paving, who was our low bidder on the first contract, they bid on Hardy right here and some other roads. And then we put out the ditch roads second. And then what did Michigan Paving see? They saw they were going to be working right here already. And they sharpened their pencils, and they were significantly lower relative to the other bidders on the second package, because they really wanted that package, because they were already going to be there. They were already going to have all their equipment on Hardy, and it made sense for them to go after that second portion of the contract. So we're trying to use how we're putting it out to bid to leverage lower pricing. One other thing that I want to bring to the board's attention real quick is how we're using the local road program and kind of integrating it into how we maintain our other assets, which is something we've been doing for a while now, but I haven't really talked about it at the local road program presentation. This is the asphalt rejuvenator mobilization map. So we're also going to treat some of our other assets with asphalt rejuvenator. For instance, phase 1 of the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail, phase 2 of the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail, new park assets, Towner Road Park, trail and parking lot. Marketplace on the Green, new park parking lot. Ferguson Park, which was repaved as part of the bridge project, new parking lot. And then the Okemos Elevation Hartrick Park Trail. Similarly, something that we've been doing with the crackfill contract, same concept. We've got one contract, how can we integrate that contract across other assets? Same thing here, but now we're doing crackfill, so interurban, not in as good a condition as phase 1 and phase 2 of the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail, obviously. We'll be hitting that with crackfill again this year, trails in Central Park, and what will soon be renamed, based on the board's action, the Ronald J. Steica Memorial Trail would receive crackfill as well as parking lots, right? And then 2 other things that I'll bring to your attention, and then I'll open it up for questions here. This isn't going to work quite as well as it did last year because our map formatting changed ever so slightly. But if you'll recall from last year, I kind of did this flip back and forth. These are this is the Pacer rating map from 2019 before the program began. And this is the north half of the township. This is Grand River Avenue right here. So basically you're looking at that north half of the township in mass, right? That's the north half today. A lot more blue, a lot more green. Flipping to the south side of town. So you can see the stark contrast. It helps that the green really pops off the screen, but you can really see that stark contrast between, what 4 years of construction gets you. So that's 4 out of 10 years right there. And then lastly, the other way that we're integrating the local road program into our other assets that we have to maintain, which is actually something that Trustee Trezise and I were talking about before your last board meeting. When I started, we had millings. Well, we didn't have millings. We had pancakes of asphalt in the service center yard, and we crushed and screened those into millings. And that's what's being used as the aggregate base and to raise the elevation for phase 2 of the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail. It's saving us tens of thousands of dollars versus buying those millings from a yard at a much more costly price, probably 4 times as much as what we pay to have it shipped and trucked to our service center and then crush and screen it into millings. We're using it as fill material. The Sanders Farm sign that was recently installed on Dobie Road, all the fill material that you see there where the sign was installed are the millings from the local road program. So we're recycling the old roads and putting them to use in our parks, on our trails, fill material for signs, any asset where we need it. It's also good for temporary road patches if we have a water main break and we need to fill that patch in before our asphalt contractor can mobilize to it. So with that, that would conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Mr. Shane.
Thank you. Dan, would you bring up the first slide that has the PACER ratings on it?
Yep.
So we started at 4.48, and we're now at 5.7, so we're gaining about 0.3 a year. Do you know what the decline was before we started the program in 2020?
That's a good question. I mean, looking at, I'm going to guess about 0.2. Interestingly, so we had a meeting with the city of Lansing regarding the College Fields 425, and at that meeting, Mayor Shore said their PACER was about a 2.8 or a 2.9 for context. I mean, at the conclusion of this program, even not hitting our goal, you would be terribly hard pressed to find a community that has a better PACER rating. And I don't think you would find a community with the square mileage of the township, 32 square miles, that has a better PACER rating. I think perhaps you could find a small village where you're dense and it's near Lake Michigan and it's very affluent. You could probably find some outliers that have a better PACER rating on average than us, but I don't think you would find a community of 32 square miles or anything in that neighborhood with a better PACER rating.
So what you're saying is if we did nothing these 10 years, our rating would have fallen to about 3.5
Yep.
instead of what we expect to be around 7.
We'd certainly be south of 4 at this point, certainly. I mean, and you can look at the HIPAA roads, and really, I mean, if the board wanted to, I do have a map of like the 2014 to 2019 roads, so those would be the final 5 years of the hot-in-place recycling that we were doing.
Yes.
It corresponds heavily to the green roads on the 2024 map, right? The roads that were crack filling, but those roads just don't last, right? Drive Bircham. Bircham was a hot-in-place. You're recycling the old asphalt, mixing it in with new aggregate and trying to pave it back down. It doesn't have the life expectancy. Or if you do really good asset management, you could get 15 years out of it. But if you just leave it to its own devices, which is what we were doing before the new road program, we didn't have crack fill or reclamite, or it didn't go over well, but we didn't have, chip and fog. We didn't have any preventative maintenance program. Those roads would be declining a lot faster too if we weren't doing something to look after them.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board member comments or questions? Trustee Wilson.
I just want to thank you for creative usage of materials, for the consolidation of areas that are worked on to get better pricing, because I think you've been a tremendous steward of assets in this case, and I'm very pleased to see how far we've come.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone else? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Officer.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Next up is agenda item 4B, the Marshall Park Concept Plan. And for that, we have Parks and Rec Director Courtney Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor Pro Tem Hendrickson and Board. Happy to be here. This is pretty exciting. So just a little bit of background first up. Marshall Park is our most northern park coming into our township. It's the first park residents and visitors see when they're coming. It's approximately 5 acres, 4.77 acres. And if you drive by, it does look that big, and I hadn't noticed prior. So it's a very good space right there to use. Marshall Park was acquired in 1974, and it was named in the honor of the Marshall brothers, and they were the first settlers of Meridian Township in 1836. That was a new little fact for myself. Based on the evaluation of the existing playground at this particular park, it was installed in 1996, and it's well overdue for renovation. The park not only serves neighbors, but based on a survey, we have folks that come from all around. We do have a parking area there, so a lot of walkers, a lot of bikers, but a lot of folks coming from outside of the immediate area. At the neighborhood listening sessions, the board had several residents that had noticed that Marshall Park could maybe use a little upgrade. And so as a result, very graciously, the board had appropriated $150,000 in general funds for us to upgrade that play structure at Marshall Park. After several visits to the park from our park staff and our facilities managers, we determined that the location of the actual play structure would be better suited on the north central part of the park where the current play structure is a very small area. It's also got a slope that slopes down to the swing set. So wanting to bring things a little bit closer together, a little bit more level so that we can accommodate both ADA and inclusive structures. Due to the age of the existing play structure, we've evaluated it, and due to the age, we will demolish that particular play structure, but not until the other play structure is ready. We will leave the swing set there as it is a bit newer and just recently painted with some new swings. So we'll leave the swing set structure as is. So with that, we requested proposals from 3 different companies that we have worked with here in the township in the past. Sinclair Recreation, Pinchura LLC, and Miracle Recreation. They provided concept plans and a fee structure, and we shared that information with the Planning Commission via email in a presentation style similar to what I'll show you here soon, but also printed them out, had them in the service center for over a week, so then in the event somebody wanted to come in and take a look at that, they were available. The Park Commission on March 12th, 2024, unanimously supported the installation of the Sinclair play structure. And there was some really important design elements that were considered. So I'll kind of go through here, and then we can talk a little bit about each different amenity and how that incorporates into this particular structure. The total project cost is $161,109 with the structure installation in mid-May, with the safety turf, which I'll show you soon, mid-June, so ribbon cutting mid-June. The additional $11,000, as mentioned, the board generously appropriated $150,000 in the general funds to accommodate the other $11,109. We're bringing that from our park development funds, which were already in place to be used either between now and 2026 for Marshall Park. So no additional funds needed, comes directly out of the park millage. And we'll go through this and we'll talk about maybe some future ideas that we have. So here's just a copy of the actual board resolution of graciously appropriating the funding to the Park Commission. And this is the Sinclair Recreation structure. As you can notice, it is both ADA compliant, which allows the turf, you'll see the turf on the bottom there, which is green, is easily accessible by any wheeled type of transportation, as well as you can see on the top photo towards the right that it is ramped all the way through up into the mid part of that structure. Within that, there is different what we call amenities that are inclusive play. So there's things for some sensory contributors, as well as some other types of amenities that can be accessible by more often. It's hard to see the downside over here, but to be inclusive is very different than being just ADA compliant. To be inclusive allows not only for physical disabilities, but also for social, emotional, and other considerations. So you'll see, and I think, let me see if I can get a better picture here. You can see here on, right here is a standalone amenity. It's a spinning chair. You can see it kind of sits out a little further, which at first seemed like I had to ask a few more questions, but there needs to be a diameter around those standalone amenities that make it safe, but also it allows some activity outside of the main structure so that folks that might not want to be in the middle of the noise or the population, there's some ability for them to have some play as well. And you can kind of see here is another play amenity that allows for climbing and can climb from a wheelchair and/or you can have multiple people play on that particular amenity. Talked a little bit about the turf installation. This was a consideration mainly for ADA and inclusivity, but know that it does cost more than wood chips. But in the end, it's safer. There's a lot less maintenance over the years. The turf can last anywhere between 20 and 25 years. It can be replaced, leaving the structure in place, and it can be repaired. So that is something that we're exceptionally excited about, and it kind of looks like grass, so it melds in pretty well. One other thing to consider here, and this was something that we talked about quite a bit, this is considered now an NDS site. An NDS site is a national demonstration site for ADA and inclusive play structures, and it's a national organization that uses evidence-based design and best practices. Incorporates 6 different essential elements of play, and that's where some of these extra amenities came in, but swinging, spinning, sliding, climbing, balancing, and brachiating, which I had to look up, but that's when you use one arm and swing from another arm to the other arm, so you're alternating swinging. These little signs down here at the bottom have QR codes. And so when you go to use the facility, you can click on the QR code and it'll ask several questions. Those survey questions go back to that organization. Some of them are local questions, some are specific to the ADA compliance and/or accessibility. And so that gathers all of that information and then uses it for research, but also provides us as a township the local information that helps us not only promote, but also use in our future projects. Let's see here. Oh, that was it. So I'll start here again so you can see. I'm having a hard time seeing up there. Emily, you're amazing. Oh, there we go. Oh, excellent. So here's kind of an overview. I'll leave it for questions in case I missed anything.
Thank you, Director Wazinski. Board members, any questions or comments? Trustee Wilson.
My grandchildren live in the city of Chicago, and there are pocket parks everywhere around there. And this is such an exciting design, and it's very similar to the design I've seen in the pocket parks around their Lakeview area. I was afraid you were going to recreate the same structure that you had, so this kind of innovative design, ADA compliant, and recognizing our different populations is fabulous. One thing about the turf, because it's made out of plastic, I understand that early turf that was used in these types of arrangements caused burns for the children. Have they refined the quality of that material?
That has never come up in the literature that I reviewed. However,
Okay.
I will certainly look into
I think it's a
that.
question you might just want to get an answer
Absolutely.
to. Because they can skid and then burn their skin. But it's terrific, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson.
Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. My grandchild lives in this part of the country, in Alexandria, Virginia, and they have many pocket parks, and this reminds me of the very modern, very up-to-date play equipment they have as well. So I'm really excited about this new equipment and the state-of-the-art design and the fact it's accessible to all children. When do you expect to start construction? When do you expect to be done with installing the new play equipment and removing the old?
So construction is the easy part. It's the supplies and materials. So supplies and materials have been ordered. We'll begin excavating for the turf area and installation of the actual structure mid-May.
Okay.
With the turf supplies are a little bit delayed, so that would come 1st of June or mid-June. So we'd expect it to be open for play mid-June. Again, as I mentioned, won't demolish the existing play structure until we have something for people to play on.
Sure.
It is well used, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Are there benches?
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. So this particular appropriation was for the structure itself. So we also did a survey to the community. We had 50 respondents from that area that responded back with some of the other amenities that they use, how they transport there, what they would like to see. The main things that they would like to see is a new play structure. Check. Also picnic areas. So there is plenty of benches, but not necessarily somewhere to sit and put a laptop or, read a book. So we planned to look at looking at more picnic areas. When we deconstruct the existing play structure, that will be somewhat of a flat area that we will install grass or seed for grass, and that'd be a really great spot right next to the parking lot that will have some additional. Some other things that they had indicated was additional walking paths. So there is a walking path through Marshall Park, but it does not extend all the way to Columbia Street, which is on the very east side. So looking at maybe extending some of those pathways. One of the challenging parts of Marshall Park is nearly 2/3 of it is wet. And so instead of trying to combat the wetness, we've worked with, in the past, a wet restoration company that will plant both native plants and wetland-style plants to help uptick some of that moisture. But also, that was something everybody was asking for. It's kind of a barren area, and having some more native species, so it can serve both purposes. What was the other main thing? There's an existing basketball court. The basketball court, again, is somewhat in the wet area, so the asphalt has deteriorated over time. So looking to see how can we replace that, make it safe. There are some large cracks. It's not terribly level at this point, so that would be something else that we would look at. Mentioned before that Marshall Park was on the plan to be upgraded by 2026 anyways, so looking to have it completed by 2026, but more likely this year if at all possible. So we'll bring that back to you for your ideas.
Thank you. And I'll simply add that, as you pointed out during the presentation, this was something that was brought to us by the residents at our listening session back in October. And this was, I think, something that we saw as a quick win, something that we could do right away to respond to some of the concerns that our neighbors had. And so I know that this has been a relatively quick turnaround in terms of getting this project moving, especially given that you're new to the job and just joined us in this capacity. And so I want to say thank you for your quick work and your hard work to get this done. I'm really excited to hear about the NDS certification so that we can be a part of that community. And I think that the presentation you provided here really shows a keen eye toward being very inclusive and willing to bring in all kinds of populations to this playground. And I expect that that's something that we'll see a lot more of over the next few years. So thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, with that, we'll go on to item 4C, the Central Park Pavilion project. And once again, we'll turn things back over to Parks and Recreation Director Courtney Wazinski.
Yeah.
Shortcuts, those are nice. Thank you again, Board. So another exciting project, Central Park Pavilion renovations. So Central Park's history dates back to 1966, when the first parcel of land was purchased. In 1974, regional vendors and farmers set up in the municipal building parking lot and began the first farmers market. As that continued to grow, within a couple years in 1978, we built the Central Park Pavilion, or it used to be called the Farmers Market Pavilion, to accommodate the farmers and the vendors. Coincidentally, this year is the 50th anniversary of the farmers market. So it's great. They've moved over to the marketplace, as we know. However, we still use this particular pavilion quite a bit for multiple events and/or celebrations. And according with our 2024 Parks and Rec goals, the Park Commission approved $300,000 to do renovations to this particular facility. So with their input, with the Park Commission, the commissioner's input, we issued a request for proposal for the renovations that we had thought would be the easiest and best way to approach that. The RFP was issued on February 1st with an end date and submittals due February 29th. We received one proposal from Nielsen Construction. Nielsen Construction also has a large contract with MSU. That'll become important here in one moment. I will go through all of the renovations that are planned, and then we'll kind of talk about the cost. But working with our building department, some of the renovations that we would like to do are going to require architectural assessments to make sure if those improvements occur, that they are safe and we won't have any concerns. So that takes a minute. So we've ordered the architectural drawings, and then when we get those back, we'll be able to start some of the other improvements. So here it's kind of a dark picture. I took these myself. But here the walls are made out of what we call T111. It's kind of like a particle board or a plywood of some sort. So we'd like to replace, these are all deteriorating, mostly around the drip line of the actual building. So we want to replace the T111 boards and also wrap them onto the inside of the pavilion. So right now it's bare 2x4s on the inside of the pavilion. So wrapping those around would allow us to get a more consistent look from both interior and exterior. The pavilion is used quite a bit because there is so much structure there that can, prevent from wind and weather. However, on both sides, the east and west side, north and south ends of the pavilion are open, and you can see these openings right there. And so what we've proposed is to add sliding barn doors that can be opened and closed by the public, mostly because we have screens, let's say at the marketplace, those will have to be uplifted and unlocked by facilities. So barn doors would allow the public to be able to open and close as they see necessary. The ceiling here in this picture looks relatively in good condition. However, the installation appears to be deteriorating a little bit. So we're going to replace the ceiling, and then most importantly is the lighting in that facility. So improving the lighting with LED fixtures, adding additional fixtures so that we can really brighten up that area. These two areas here where you see the white, I walked in thinking that I would turn into this little area, and it's not. It's just one spot there. It appeared to be vending machines is what we're thinking. Pulled the vending machines out, so there's just a void there. So what we'd like to do is add 2 exterior doors on these two. We'll use it for storage or whatever else we might. And then replace, you can see this door, it's a steel door, but it's pretty rusty and deteriorated, so replace that door. So these 3 doors will be exterior security doors that will match. Some of the other things on the, let's say, exterior facade, you can see here the soffit and fascia. It's hard to see here, but they're in disrepair as well as the gutters. So it'd be a replacement of soffit and fascia and gutters and downspouts. We'll replace the roof as well as paint the entire structure. Colors to be determined. In this area here are the 2 bathrooms for that facility. In the women's bathroom, it is plumbed for 2 toilets. However, there's only 1 toilet at this time. So this gets used quite a bit because of Central Park. So we want to add back in the 1 toilet, add stalls so that we'd have 2 spots for people to use. Put some tile on the concrete floor in the bathroom, and then paint and kind of little facelift in there as well. Of course, once we're all done, we'll pretty it up with some seeding of the grass and then some native plants, and we'll work with our native plant experts to do that. And then this is just a very small area, but it's siding. So that siding will be replaced as well. It's in poor condition, so to paint it doesn't make sense. Only other thing I wanted to mention was that, again, the Park Commission approved $300,000. This entire project came in at $164,050. Given that the architectural drawings come back and everything's good to go, that was what our plans are for that particular pavilion. Ask for questions.
Board members. Treasurer DeShane.
I am curious about adding insulation to the ceiling. It seems to have a large open area above the walls, and to the point of insulating the ceiling with all that open to the outside area seems a little bit irrelevant, almost. How much insulation is up in there now?
I may have misspoke, Treasurer. It's not an insulation, it's the facade. So it's,
The sheathing?
yeah. it's a
Okay,
sheathing.
that makes more
Yes,
sense.
yes, no insulation, so sorry about that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Trustee Wilson.
In looking at the drawing, I had heard a rumor that you were going to put in some kind of a window or opening beyond the current openings on the west side of the building, on the soccer field side.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. I don't have a great picture of that, but what you're referring to is this particular
This wall,
wall?
yes,
Yep.
yes.
And they're on both sides of that, those vending areas?
Yes.
And yes, we would like to open those up just enough to see out, maybe put a bench with a ledge.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that the architectural drawings will either permit or not permit, given the wind flow throughout that building. So thank you for bringing that up. I did,
So you're not going to change the configuration of the walls and the openings at this time, right?
Correct.
Just put in the barn doors for both the north and south side?
Yep.
Okay. Are you planning to improve the cement pad outside the building? It's pretty small, especially on this side, on the south side.
So the concrete itself is in really, really great shape.
Okay.
You're right, the footprint of that building does extend to the end of that concrete pad. What we thought was maybe once we do the renovations, if we need additional concrete or seating areas, we could consider it at that time, given we're under budget.
Okay. I was in this pavilion for a tremendous, do you remember? The President's Party in '21. We were there for Rotary because we meet in the summertime out here in the pavilion, and we had a tremendous storm come up. We probably should have been evacuated out of the area. But I think the barn door idea is great because that storm came out of the southwest and it poured rain in to the point where half the interior was soaked. So I think that's a great idea that you're going to do that. There's sufficient roof line that you don't have that problem coming with rain coming in from the top of the current wall structure.
Yeah, the
So through
soffit's
that
at least 4
Through
feet.
that opening, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Other board members? I'll simply say that, this is, I think, from what I had seen last year, the year before, this is a slightly scaled back version of this project. And that's okay. Not every project needs to shoot for the moon. I think, you're producing excellent value and you're coming in under budget. And it's the Park Commission's money at the end of the day, but it's Meridian tax dollars, even before the end of the day. So I think it's really nice to see that we continue to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. We're getting them good value by updating the structure, but we're doing it on a budget. So I'm really pleased to see the progress here. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you, appreciate that, appreciate your support.
Any other comments? Thank you, Director Wazinski.
Thank you.
Next up is Agenda Item 5, Citizens Address Agenda Items and Non-Agenda Items. Any citizens wishing to address the board at this time, now would be the time to do so. There'll be another moment at the end of the board meeting at item 14 on our agenda. If you would like to speak before the board, you have 3 minutes. We ask that you fill out a green card over there on the table. I don't have any green cards at this time. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak to the board? Seeing none, we'll close public comments and move on to Agenda Item 6, the Township Manager's Report. And for that, we'll turn things over to Township Manager Frank Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor Pro Tem, members of the board. Good to see you this evening. It was kind of ironic up here listening to Director Wazinski go through the plans for the park, for Marshall Park. It is, if you think about good governance, you think about just 8 or 9 months ago, you're setting up in the meeting in Hazlet. You come back, and I think it was Trustee Wilson and Trustee Hendrickson who came back and said, we got an idea. This is in 2026. Let's do it now. Let's move this project forward. And that was just 6 or 7 months ago. And look what's happened. And I think you also provided your estimate of a ribbon cutting in June, too, if I recall. So
monitored
you think
that.
about it, though, how that's followed a path and just what can happen in just 8 months. So I appreciate everyone's involvement with that, the Park Commission, the board, and Director Wazinski. I'd like to start by, as I always do, recognizing some of our staff for their years of service. James Arnett in Public Works is 6 years now with the township. Emma Gorell, her first year in police records. And Melissa Massey and Mark McAleer, Mark Security, hired on the same day 2 years ago. Dan Palacios, 20 years in Public Works. Angela Ryan, used to be in the clerk's office, then in the planning office, and now she's in assessing. She's been here 15 years this week. And Keith Chapman, who was recently promoted up in the planning department. Keith and Brian were both promoted, and Keith now has been here 4 years. I want to congratulate Clerk Guthrie, who can't be here this evening, but Thursday night we'll be receiving her Level 3 Clerk Award from the state of Michigan for her 3 years. That's a lot of work put forward to get that. And I know Deputy Clerk Gordon is going next week, and she's working on year 2. So good to see our involvement and education of our team. Joint Board and Commission meeting is the 26th. It's next week. We have a great turnout coming. And we'll be, as we always do, we'll be starting out with a very brief recap of 2023 and a look ahead to 2024 for our members. And then we'll hear from all of our groups. The community survey. Community survey has been done every 3 years going back 20 years now, and 2024 is the survey year. And so tomorrow we'll be having, I wouldn't call it an initial kickoff, but some discussion on our community survey and getting that process underway. How that dovetails into some of the things we're doing yet remains to be seen. There'll be a tree project, a tree removal project going on that's from the makings of the water plant, putting in a raw water line along Park Lake Road. You should know about that. That's from the county line up at Bath. Coming back, it'll be just north. I toured the site today with Deputy Manager Opsimer, and we've decided I've asked for a delay in that project for a week until we can do some communications with the residents, so that'll be going on. But if you go up there and you want to take a look at where it's at, go up to the Park Lake Road to where the Greens development is, and just past the Greens along the fence, which then runs along the former Walnut Hill site up to the Clinton County line. That's where most of the trees will be removed. So we're going to work on a little communication before we give the green light on that project. Another area that we're working on is the Village of Okemos. We had a meeting last week. I know 3 of the board members were either able to Zoom in or attend. One of the main focuses right now is greening up the site. This is an idea that came from Trustee Hendrickson about, if we can't do something right now, let's at least make it attractive. And we're working on that. Actually, we kind of in some ways, I wouldn't say demanded it, but we were pretty strong that it needed to happen. And Trustee Wilson and Supervisor Jackson also participated in the meeting. Silverleaf Development, it's been a while since you've heard of the Silverleaf Development. You were on the Planning Commission back then. It's been around for a while, and this is the development along Bennett Road, just next to the veterinary office. It's 150 homes. They finally have Drain Commission approval. So this project would run behind Champion Woods and the Sundance neighborhoods back there. You remember how controversial it was? We had mediation with the neighborhoods. It was quite a process, but hopefully that's going to be underway. We just got our taxable value in for 2024, $2,281 million. That's not exactly factual because the veterans reductions have not taken place yet. We figure that's going to be about $10 million, but still we'll have a taxable value finished of well over $2.2 billion. Compare us to communities, most communities of our size in the state of Michigan, you'll find that's on the very high side as comparison to most communities. March 20th, tomorrow, there'll be a deer appreciation for our people who are involved in our deer management program. There'll be an event for them tomorrow to thank them. We have a March Madness competition here inside the building right now, and if you're interested in getting involved in that, it's a fundraiser for Meridian Cares. See Katie Love. We had a meeting yesterday on Zoom with the state regarding our senior center. Maybe you'll refer to that when you, Trustee Wilson, do your comments. You're going to hear more about the Undrew Drain. That's the drain that's on Grand River. That's in front of adjacent to one of the proposed recreational marijuana locations, which is adjacent to where the self-storage building will go. The Unruh Drain is up for discussions, and we're working with, we're represented by Stacy Hassong at the law firm, and then we're working with the county on that. The Lake Lansing Dam project, we're paying close attention to that. That right now is in the hands of the Ingham County Board of Commissioners, but they've got to decide who's going to be the oversight board on that. That's still up for question, because that oversight board can be anyone. It's a very unusual situation. It's not this drain commissioner that sets that assessment for this project. It's whoever the county board of commissioners sets as the oversight board. There's a better term for it, but I can't come up with it right now. But they're the ones who then will set the assessments once the project gets approved. The Prime Meridian magazine went out last week. They had a lot of great comments about it. The water meter project, we have 9,000 meters going in over the next 3 years. It's going to be a substantial project for us, and we'll have a company that's involved helping us out with that. We met with the Briarwood neighborhood 2 weeks ago and provided them a bunch of information for their meeting, their neighborhood meeting that took place last week. The Brownfield Redevelopment Authority met last week, and we have 3 new members on that. One of them is the result of Trustee Trezise getting appointed to the board, who's no longer now on the Brownfield board. The 3 new members, and that's Director Milton Scales, John Sarver, and from the EDC, Kim Thompson. Those 3 individuals are new to the Brownfield board. You'll notice some foyer work if you go to the police department. The foyer, the vest is under construction. One of the last steps in the redesign of the police department. Staffing wise, really happy to report the police department numbers are up. And if you take the police department numbers out of our overall employment, we're at about 115 minus the police department, and 114 of those positions are filled. We only have 1 vacancy in the township. And that's upstairs in the engineering department. The 2023 audit will be underway April 15th, and I believe Trustee Wilson is on the audit committee for the board. That's coming up in very short order, fitting based on your career. Fire truck liability, I just learned litigation, I should say. I just learned yesterday that the judge assigned to that is Judge Wanda Stokes, who used to work with Supervisor Steicha, late Supervisor Steicha at the AG's office. I want to thank Chief Hamill and Director Ianni for their work. They met with the state on the reimbursement for our brush program and had a very productive meeting today, and I've heard good things about that. Celebrate Meridian, June 29th, Juneteenth, June 15th. I want to thank Deputy Manager Opsimer for his work and his team. It's the whole entire team. But let me tell you something. The county has never been happier than the day we took over the road program that they don't have to do it. This local road program and managing it and all, think about, we're working in front of 1,000, 1,200 homes every summer. It's a lot of work, and we get a lot of feedback on it. And lastly, the fire dorm project is full speed ahead. We've hired Hobbs & Black, an engineering firm, to oversee this project. The early estimates, early with a capital E, are that it's going to be less than what we expected. Chief Hamill said I could say that, but I couldn't provide any number that he would. So it's just early numbers. So anyway, that's my report. A lot going on in the township. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Board members, any questions? I've got 2, I think. So as I recall, the Silverleaf came with a dedication of some land for preservation. Can you tell me, is that sort of, when in the timeline of that project does that happen?
That's a really good question. And I'll have to check on that.
I'm digging back in the archives now.
No, that's exactly right. It's the 19 acres, 19.3 acres on the very north part of that parcel that's supposed to come back to us through it, and it'll connect to a land preservation up there. And then also remember, you and I live this project, but there's the pathway that connects through, and then we accept liability. There's a lot of things that are involved in this project that now that they have the green light, which was just last week, now we need to get down to business on those details and make sure that they're memorialized going forward.
I learned a lot more about bollards than I ever needed to know from that project.
I remember.
And then my second question was, thank you for the update on the events. Do we have a date for the Pride event this year?
We do, and I don't have it in front of me, but we do have a date, yes. And the Parks Department's going to have a lot more oversight and involvement this year with that project, but Brian Shorkey is still very much involved, and we need him on this project. He's invaluable with that, but I'll have to get back with you on the date on that.
Okay, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up on our agenda is item 7, board member reports and activities and announcements. Any board members with activities? Trustee Sunland.
Yeah, so I attended the Economic Development Corporation meeting on January 4th. They had not met in quite some time. I think there's a little, we need to get more members on the EDC. So we haven't been very active, but they did go over a regional marketing campaign contribution, and they went over, reviewing their 2024 goals, action plan, and the 2023 through 2028 economic development strategy and implementation matrix. But it was a very quick meeting and kind of just touch base. So we're looking forward to having more members on that board in the future.
Excellent. Well, good news. I think we've got help on the way tonight at action item 12C, so we'll get some more members headed their way.
Right.
Any other board members? Trustee Trezise.
Yes, I had the opportunity and the pleasure to attend the Environmental Commission meeting a couple of weeks ago. Didn't know anything about them and what they're involved in, but that is one impressive group of volunteers, and they're all volunteers. They've got some projects going up. They're working with some solar providers who have, and through the region has various meetings through the year where they invite citizens who are considering putting solar on their home or something. And if they sign up for it, and there's usually a particular, or there's a provider or a builder there who does solar work, he will come out, assess their needs, their capabilities, costs, give them a bid. And if a number of them out of this group sign up to get that evaluation, they aren't committed to buy anything, they aren't committed even to go with that particular vendor, but they get an idea of what's possible for them. And then there'll be discounts to them as to the total cost, depending on how many of the group do actually sign up to go forward on a solar project. We had a relatively long presentation about efforts to, I call it gleaning. They get foodstuffs that are not going to be used. They've got a cooperation agreement with the farmers market, and a lot of times when they close on Saturday, the vendors say, well, I don't want to take all this home with me, so they give it to them. They're working with the township and using the township freezer to store that until they can deliver it to, I think, about 10, 12 different food banks in the city, in the region.
We actually pick it up.
Yep.
Because I participate in that program, and my food pantry in downtown picks up, Monday morning is pickup day.
Yep.
And I'll get 50 to 70 pounds of vegetables primarily, and take them downtown for our food pantry clients, and it's a wonderful gift. This will be our third year coming up doing that.
They're talking about getting in the neighborhood of thousands of pounds a month from this, and it's not just from the farmer's market, but they've got deals with various grocery stores who, when they're reaching the end of the sell-by date, and it's still very good food, they provide this. Again, they coordinate with, sometimes they deliver it themselves of this volunteer group. Sometimes the groups that are receiving the food go through them, but they're coordinating that, and it's been amazingly successful.
Great.
But they're an active group and a very dedicated group. Sometime it might be worth watching some of their meetings. They are recorded, they're available online, and you get some information from them that isn't readily available. So, thank you for appointing me to that commission, or liaising with that commission.
Is there not a Solarized Meridian meeting coming up?
There is on April 1st,
April 1st?
right here.
Okay.
I think it's at
What
6 or
time?
7 o'clock at night.
7?
6
And
or
that's where
7.
they introduce the concept of doing solar at your home?
Right.
Okay, good. I want everybody to know that.
Thank you, Trustee Trezise. Any other board members with comments? Trustee Wilson?
Thank you, Supervisor Pro Tem. The CRC, the Community Resource Commission, met last week. We had an extremely successful fundraiser with that baby bottle thing. We netted just under $3,000 doing those bottles at local locations where kids could fill them with coins, or you could throw a check in or cash or whatever. And it was really successful. And all the monies that are raised through these efforts, and I have to say that Human Resource Specialist Katie Love is like remarkable, because she comes up with these really creative ideas, and then whatever money is raised goes immediately to our emergency fund to aid our residents that are low income or in difficult situations or have emergencies regarding their rent, utilities, food, and so on, and we help those residents to get back on their feet. Manager Walsh brought up that we had a meeting yesterday with DHHS and discussed our $5 million grant that we have with the state of Michigan to build our community center, which incorporates the senior center. And we have some quarterly reporting due, but we assured them that we are well on the path. We had a very productive meeting today in which we are going to start assessment of a particular site that we hope will work, and it's a repurpose of an existing building in the community, and we're not going to talk about it yet because we have to be sure that it is a property that can be repurposed for a community center. So we're moving along. We are also going to, we talked today about our community outreach, about our senior center. Not that many people know that we are trying to do this effort in our community. We're one of the few communities that have no resource like this available to our residents. So we started our discussions about what mechanism we're going to use to get that word out. And we think there's a no cost, other than the printing of the paper, option for us to send out an information sheet with drawings, with our tax bills and with our utility bills. So that makes a lot of sense, and we're going to progress with that thinking. So every resident that's a property owner or renter will see the information on our proposed senior center, community center. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. Anyone else? Treasurer DeShane.
Trustee Trezise's comments about the Environmental Commission gives me a reason to revisit our recent award. Meridian Township was recognized by the ISA, which is the International Society of Arboriculture, which is the State Tree Growers Association. They gave us their annual Gold Leaf Beautification Award for trees that we planted along Oakbush Road in Kenowa in 2021. And around 18 good-sized trees were planted by volunteers. That project came out of the Environmental Commission, because we gave the Environmental Commission their first time ever a grant for $10,000 to do whatever they saw fit. And that year, they decided on trees. Now, since then, they branched out. They've got all kinds of interesting pilot projects going on with schools, daycare. And in fact, this year, I think we've funded it for $20,000 in environmental grants. But that tree program was the first year, and it was all launched by our really excellent environmental commission. So thank you for giving them lots of credit tonight.
I should add that the green grants from the Environmental Commission, the first round has come in and they're being evaluated. If there's money left over, there may be another open period for people to apply. Some of them look real exciting. So
Excellent.
it's good to see.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, seeing no others, we'll move on to agenda item 8, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda tonight?
So
Treasurer
moved.
Shane.
Support.
Supported by trustee Wilson. Any comments or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the chair votes yes. Agenda passes. Item number 9, the consent agenda. We have a number of items on the consent agenda, including communications with the board. The minutes from our March 5th, 2024 regular meeting are the manager's bills. 3 items relating to Celebrate Meridian, permits and applications. 2 public hearing notices for the recreational marijuana license applications, a charitable gaming license for the You've Got This project, and the ratification of new police officers. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move the approval of the consent agenda.
Moved by trustee Trezise, supported by trustee Wilson. Any comments on the consent agenda? I did have one question relating to the bills this week. I noticed that there were 3 items in the bills relating to reimbursement for excess taxes applied through payroll to a number of former employees. Thank you for coming, Director Ianni. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Supervisor Pro Tem, members of the board, one of the benefits we offer our employees is when they separate, we pay half of their sick leave into a retiree health savings account. And inadvertently, when we process payroll, that money was made after tax rather than pre-tax. So extra money was withheld rather than put into and it diminished their paychecks. So we're just making the employees whole based on our HR policies.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot more sense. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Deputy Clerk Gordon can give us a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Pro Tem Hendrickson.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Yes.
And trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Sounds like the consent agenda passes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 10, questions for the attorney. We have none. Number 11, hearings, we have none. And finally, next up on the agenda is item 12A, consulting agreement, 1-month extension, Maisner. And for that, we have Manager Frank Walsh.
Thank you. Would you like me to pause for a moment, or?
Yeah, while we wait for Treasurer DeShane, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess.
Okay. Very much. This is the same agreement that I brought to you a couple weeks ago with one additional thing that I should have mentioned last time, but I omitted, and that is there's an addendum to the healthcare part of this. So this is an agreement with former Director Maisner to continue on for 6 months, salary-wise, 12 months for healthcare, as she continues to help lead us in a number of areas, especially with the Community Senior Center. Again, we had a meeting today, and her insight was invaluable with the history she has, because keep in mind that the Senior Center, all of her time, as strange as it is, the leader of the Senior Center is actually a school employee, but actually reported to someone in Meridian Township. So it's been kind of awkward, but her work has been invaluable. So tonight I'm asking you for a 1-month extension on the payroll side to get her to August 2nd, but also very minor change in an addendum to the healthcare. And that is before Director Maisner, former Director Maisner, was paying her healthcare premium every month, and the township was reimbursing her. Now the township is just paying the premium. The premium has not changed. There's no dollar amount change. There's no continuation beyond the 12 months. It's just a simple one step less for the health care. So there's 2 things tonight: 1 month on the payroll side, and the addendum for health care, just in the process of the way we do it. And I apologize that I didn't have that. I had it, I just totally forgot about that, the addendum at the last meeting. Obviously, when there's no changes to it monetarily, there was no point in anything I was trying to hide. I just forgot about it. So those are the 2 things before you this evening. I think it's really important to a number of our areas, but also to our senior center project, that we can keep her on through August.
Thank you, Manager Walsh. Board members. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Supervisor Pro Tem. I gotta get used to that. I will move to amend the current Maisner retirement agreement between Meridian Township and former Parks and Recreation Director Lou Ann Maisner through August 2nd, 2024.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. Any comments on this item, Trustee Wilson?
Yes, thank you. We are in a very hard push forward to see if we can execute the senior/community center. And 24 years of experience of oversight over the current senior center has been invaluable, and that's what Luann has brought to the table. And that's why I would like to see this additional month, it's only a month, on her current contract, so that we can continue to utilize her very important input, which was demonstrated today because she had another wild and crazy idea that actually might work. So we really love having her there, and she is really doing the work, and therefore I support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. Treasurer DeShane.
I would only reiterate Trustee Wilson's comments. She's an invaluable member of the Senior Community Center Task Force, and continues, I'm sure, current Parks Director Wazinski would attest to helping with that transition in any way that is necessary. She's a great addition to our team. We're lucky to have her for a few more months.
Excellent. Any other comments? No? I'll turn things over to Deputy Clerk Gordon for a roll call vote.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Pro Tem Hendrickson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Walsh,
Prior to that,
we have a date?
yeah, well, from Director Wazinski, through a little text action, yeah. Yeah, with 3 rainbows, by the way, August 10th.
August 10th.
Thank you very much.
Mark your calendars.
We're going to do our second motion.
Okay. Well,
On this item here?
No, don't we have the second motion regarding the
it's kind of
healthcare?
linked, it's totally linked to this, so I'll do, move to approve the proposed Maisner Retirement Consulting Agreement between Meridian Township and Parks and Recreation Director Luann Maisner, and authorize the township manager to sign the agreement.
Support.
It's been moved by trustee Sunland and supported by trustee Wilson. I guess I'd ask for clarification. I was under the impression that that motion that was in the packet, which is on the page labeled 12G, was the initial agreement as presented back in July. I don't believe that's a motion we need to make at this time.
Right, the motion.
Thank you.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, the motion that was just approved covers both the extension of the 1 week and the change, the addendum in the healthcare. Both are included in that motion.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So if it's the pleasure of the motion maker to withdraw that motion.
Sure, I'll
Thank you.
withdraw the motion if we don't need it.
Withdraw support.
Much obliged. All righty, that takes us to agenda item 12B, which is the 2024 first quarter budget amendments. And to present on that, we have Finance Director Dante Ianni.
Mr. Supervisor Pro Tem, members of the board, presented a set of 2024 first quarter proposed budget amendments. The change is relatively small in terms of our fund balance. I can go over some of the items that I'm proposing tonight. The first one, the only increase in revenue I propose right now is an increase in grants for MCOLs, which is money we get to reimburse some of our police academy training. That was something that was unbudgeted. But at this point in the fiscal year, I haven't really presented any additional revenue changes just because it's a little early for us at this point. Other expenditures, half-time position to cover the meter replacement project in my department. Clerk's office, some additional supplies for elections through our election reimbursement account. For the environmental programs, we don't project we'll need as much for drain payments this year, so some of that went down, which is where we got most of our savings in the general fund. For police, the additional increase in the general fund was for the MCOL's Police Academy training. For fire, there's some small changes, the biggest one just being we received a grant and they added expenditure on that as well. Human services, a small budget error. And then also communications, they went over by $37 in the Primary magazine. So those are the changes for the general fund. And into the special revenue funds. We did need additional money to complete 2023 roads, projects. There were just some places we couldn't get to, so the additional $150,000 for roads there. An additional $350,000 for construction, so that would increase our budget this year for the local road program by $500,000. For Parks and Recreation, there was a small budget error for the farmers market, so I'm just fixing that to $25,000 by increasing it by $22,500. For pedestrian bike path, we were way under budget last year. We didn't spend all the money we had budgeted. So this additional $1 million is largely money that just was not spent last year because the projects couldn't be completed last year. So we wanted to carry that forward. Land preserve, there were some small changes there. The biggest change was Parks and Recreation would like to add a land stewardship professional to help out there. So they wanted to add an additional staff person. So that's where that additional funding is going. They added some additional budget items for Brownfield. None of this was in the budget previously because we didn't have good projections for where our revenues and expenses might be. So I've added that. Community Needs Fund, we got an additional grant from Consumers Energy. I created a special account for that one because that cannot be spent on utilities, so it's segregated. American Rescue Plan Act Fund. This was something Deputy Manager Opsheimer helped me with because we had a lot of unspent money from prior fiscal years. So we went through our prior year budgets, looked through everything we spent, and there was a lot of money that just we weren't able to spend in prior years. So we'd like to have that reauthorized just to make sure we can spend it according to the board's wishes that were established in prior years. Capital Projects Fund, additional $150,000 for the Marshall Playground project. So that's where we added that. There wasn't a general ledger number. This initially approved, so I've added the general ledger number out of the Capital Projects Fund for that. Additional $6,000 to complete some additional work we needed in the mailroom. and an additional $195,000 to finish the public safety and flooring project. That was money that couldn't be spent last year because we couldn't complete the project. So it's mostly a carry forward. The rest of the items are fairly small, just small budget errors.
Thank you, Director.
I've got for you.
Treasurer DeShane.
I move to approve the attached 2024 first quarter budget amendments with a decrease in budgeted fund balance for the general fund in the amount of $640, which projects a use of fund balance of $542,074 based on a 2024 results. The projected fund balance at December 31st, 2024 will be $9,355,754.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Treasurer DeShane, any comments?
Thank you for the illumination on these items. It sounds like an awful lot of them are carryovers from last year that we couldn't be spent, but we can make them part of this year's budget.
Yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Wilson.
I have no further comments.
Any other board members? I'll simply comment that when the amendments to a budget of our size come at less than $1,000, that's pretty spot on budgeting so far. So we appreciate
Good
that.
point.
I'll also just ask, it appears as though in the American Rescue Plan Act, there was a very significant savings that we had in the IT project. Looks like almost $250,000. Is that accurate?
Well, there was actually a lot of funding that wasn't spent, so that was, the network upgrades is actually to increase the budget by $244,816, which is the balance of what was not spent in prior years. Most of that was in the first year. This was budgeted in 2022, where we were able to spend those funds.
I see.
So this is just to replace those funds according to the board's wishes, reauthorize them for the current year because we couldn't spend them in 2022.
I see. Okay. Well, that makes more sense. Sorry to see we don't have an extra $250,000 to spend on other projects, but glad to know that it was being put to its original use. Any other comments or questions? Okay. With that being said, this does have to do with money, so we'll turn things over to Deputy Clerk Gordon for a roll call vote.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Pro Tem Hendrickson?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Director Ianni.
Thank you.
Next up, we have an appointment for item 12C to the Economic Development Corporation. This is from Supervisor Jackson. There are a number of vacancies on the EDC at the moment, and we have someone who's excited to join that, that body. And so the person looking to join is Nathan Ide. So I will go ahead on behalf of Supervisor Jackson and make the move to appoint Nathan Ide to the Economic Development Corporation for a 6-year term ending December 31st, 2029.
I second.
Supported by Trustee Sunland. Yeah, this is, I believe we just appointed Mr. Ide to another board just a couple of months ago. So I'm very glad to see that we have someone who's excited to serve and serve in this new capacity. Trustee Sunland, anything to add?
Oh, no, just, earlier I said that, we had missed a couple meetings, and the last meeting I attended was in January, so, this is a necessary appointment. We need to get the Economic Development Corporation back on its legs.
Great. Trustee Trezise.
Yes, and serving on the planning commission, the representative there that went to the EDC reported more times than not that there was no meeting because there was no quorum. And when you've only got 3 or 4 members or 5 members that are actually appointed to that, losing 2 or losing 3 because they have other commitments prohibits the action of the board. So I think to the extent we can get it fully staffed, we should. But this is a step in the right direction.
Treasurer DeShane.
I'll make another plug for not just the EDC, but other boards and commissions. We have 182 appointments to make to our various boards and commissions, and many of them are very short on members. In fact, our Transportation Commission does not have enough members right now to even meet quorum. And the EDC is not far behind it. So we do need more members of the EDC. If you're interested in economic development in Meridian Township, this is an excellent place to put your time. If you would like a list of all those that are available, you can contact my office or the clerk's office. You can reach me at 853-4144, and I'll be glad to send you a list of open vacancies, and maybe our residents out there listening tonight might find an area they wish to volunteer and share their expertise and passion for the township on one of our boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll also add, once you do find out where those vacancies are, the application form is available on the township's website under the "How do I apply" section. Really aptly formatted there. And it looks to be pretty easy to do. So please don't let that be a barrier to signing up and serving. It's how many of us got our start in township service as well. Any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the motion passes. Next up is item 13A, which is a amendment to our ordinance to update the Planning Commission membership standards. And we have Director of Community Planning and Development, Tim Schmidt.
Thank you, Supervisor Pro Tem. So this is literally a one-word change to the ordinance, as you can see. This is something that really you don't think about it until we did the room renovation, and you'll note that the dais that you're sitting at only has 8 monitors and 8 chairs, and the Planning Commission has 9 members. That is what prompted this discussion initially, was simply a lack of space, but as we got into this further and the supervisor met with the current chair and vice chair of the Planning Commission, you got to thinking, well, the Planning Commission has actually functioned with 7 members for a number of months over the course of the last 2 years. Got a master plan updated partially with 7 members, and so they can absolutely function with that. And there's been no major loss of productivity with those lesser numbers. And so this was just something that was brought up, and no one seemed to have any major concerns with it. Just by way of background, before 2008, the Michigan Township, Michigan Planning Acts were split up between township, county, and city, village. And so each one had different standards. The Township Act, I believe, was from the late 50s, and you could have from 5 to 9. The City Act was different, and the County Act was different. And so the 2008, the state of Michigan consolidated all of our planning acts and all of our zoning acts into 2 updated pieces of legislation that allow you to have 5, 7, or 9. That is your answer if you are anything other than a county. Counties can be larger just because they're geographically generally larger. The problem is changing that, you don't really want to kick people off, and so ultimately you can only change it when you have a lesser number seated. And so some communities have made that change. Other communities have not. They've largely been full in that amount of time. I have worked in communities that have both 7 and 9. I've worked in both. Lansing, as I mentioned in my memo, has gone to essentially a ward system that mirrors their council, which is a unique way of tackling the problem. And so we're just here to bring this forward as a concept and see if there's any interest in proceeding with it. Again, it would literally, staff has really spent a lot of time because we can't believe it's only one spot, but it would literally change one word in the ordinance from 9 to 7. So I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Any discussion? Treasurer DeShane.
I'm one of the few board members that has not served on the Planning Commission, but the rest of this board, at this side of the table, at least has. I would love to hear from the 3 of you and your sense, having been on the Planning Commission. Do you think 7 is a more manageable, workable number, or do you think we need the full 9 members?
Trustee Trezise.
Other than geography, it doesn't really matter how many people you have on the Planning Commission, to my mind. It's how dedicated they are to providing or doing the job. Mm-hmm. We have been lucky, at least in the 5 years that I was on the Planning Commission, everybody took it seriously and were striving to do a good job on behalf of the township and the citizenry. I think at times it has been difficult to get more than 7. I don't mean in attendance, I mean 7 people willing to serve on the commission. I think it's an entirely appropriate change, and I would support this going to 7. We have 7 very good and active members now, and I think we will continue to function that way without any loss of productivity or input for that matter.
I concur. I sat on this body for a couple of years as well. And I think, it's important to have people who are committed to doing some very hard work. Their work is just as hard as we have here on the board in many cases, because these are decisions that affect people and their neighbors. And, I think it's also important to have a diversity of opinion. But I think you can get that on a 7-member board. Certainly we do here. And so I would be supportive of this change as long as the Planning Commission is supportive of this change. And from what it sounds like, the comments that Chair Shrewsbury made, that they would be.
So the chair and vice chair both are supportive of it. We're actually going to discuss it with them on Monday to confirm that there's no other concerns. But I fully anticipate that the remainder of the board, we mentioned it previously, they raised no major concerns. So now that we've discussed it assuming the board is still interested in proceeding with this, we will have the conversation with the Planning Commission, make sure there's no other hidden issues that we're not aware of, and we'll bring it, we would then bring it back for formal introduction.
And this is a 2-step process, as with any ordinance change?
You would need to introduce it and then it would be adopted, yes.
Excellent. Trustee Wilson.
So I was on the Planning Commission from 1988, I'm dating myself, to 1992 for 4 years. During that time, we updated the master plan, and we only had 7 members the entire time. So I am here to tell you that experience showed me that 7 members work very well. I think you reach consensus sometimes more quickly. And I believe this is an ideal size for a board, as demonstrated here.
And I would add that this, I mentioned this in my memo, but it bears repeating. This change was in staff's recommendation in 2008 to update, because when the planning enabling legislation was changed, we had to do some updates locally. Every community did. And this change was in there up to the point of essentially the final introduction. And that was the point at which the township board decided they would prefer to leave it at 9 then. So this isn't a new topic, it's a timely topic now.
Timely.
Seems like we have a general consensus that we would be interested in moving forward with this, with the blessing of the Planning Commission. So if you could speak with them on Monday, and then we'll see you back in a couple of weeks.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. That brings us to item 14, comments from the public. Once again, if anyone from the public would like to speak, they can submit a green card, and we'd be happy to hear them. Time limit is 3 minutes, and we'd ask for your name and address. Anyone from the public wishing to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 15, other matters and board member comments. Any board member comments? Okay. That brings us to item 16, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner, Commissioner, Trustee Wilson. Supported by Treasurer DeShane. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye. We stand adjourned at 7:36.